Tonight on the TTRPG Flip Through, I am talking about I Have the High Ground by Jess Levine, a collaborative two-player dueling game of banter, posturing, and capes. This is a game with simple mechanics, but it really dwells on the single concept of that moment before the duel happens. That tension where you and your foe are figuring out, sizing each other up, who's going to make the first move, who's going to pull their sword, their gun, their blaster first. And it's all that. But it's genreless, so you could imagine playing it in a fantasy world, in a Western world, in a modern world. Maybe it's just a simple conversation at a bar. All of these ideas kind of come at you as you're reading through this zine, and it also it's a great zine too because it's full of style and it's a lot of fun to read. So let's dig into it. This is a 22-page risograph zine, and risograph is a printing process that's kind of in between like a higher book run printing machine where you need 1,000 copies, but it's not a photocopy machine. It's kind of in the middle. But you get a really nice high quality zine out of here with really, really solid printing, and the texture and high quality paper in here as well. So I have the high ground, 1 or 2 hours to play, and you just need something to write with, and 2 6-sided dice. A lot of this book is dedicated to building your characters and building the setup. And I think it's helpful to have that because you could just sort of create your own characters, but this creates the character creation allows for better dramatic dynamics. The rules summary here, you can see in this sort of rock, paper, scissors matching scenario. There's thrust, feints, and parries, but again, this is a game of dueling, so it really leans into all the language and the style and the feelings of a duel. And, thrust beats feint, feint beats parry, parry beats thrust. Each player will pick what they are doing in a round, and then the outcome will be determined. In the case of a tie, whoever has priority wins. So, first thing is you create the background, and they encourage you to do this collaboratively. Pick a genre, pick the stakes. Is this going to be low stakes, a foil, meaningful stakes, saber, or epi, towering stakes? So again, I love it's using these languages from dueling, these different weights of blades to describe the weight of the stakes. Low stakes example would be like a public fencing match between rivals or a simple bar fight. A saber would be a duel between knights, a desperate melee between soldiers, so life or death. An epi would be a battle that the duel will be lethal, and it could be for the future of the world. Maybe it's between Jedis. That's an example they give here. Or 2 hackers vying for combat. Again, there's so many different ways that you could play, and it's 1 or 2 hours. So it's a nice, simple experience that you can share with someone, and really easy to pick up, right? So now with you and your partner get to decide your history. How do you know each other? Are you rivals? Are you ex-lovers? Are you mentor and mentee? Selecting from the table below, you each pick some descriptors, and you pick one individual, and then you pick a descriptor that both characters share. And you also can pick opposites from here. So it's giving you some ideas. You could come up with your own, but I think these ideas are enough. So you're sharing something in common. You have something different. So setting up those dramatic moments. What is the exposition? What is bringing you together on the battlefield today? Why did you challenge the other person? Maybe it was a chance encounter. And what is the environment like? And it asks you to pick 1 to 3 different objectives from this list. Capes. This is a game of capes. Capes actually have a in-game purpose. and it plays out in the cape rubric. The cape rubric, when you first start the game, you have to decide who has priority, and that is based on the cape rubric. So if you were wearing a cape and someone else wasn't wearing a cape when you played this game, guess what? Cape wearer gets priority. What's the second one? Which character's cape is closest to the floor? Love it. Which player owns a cape? Which player last wore a cape? So very cape-focused mechanics. And then if it gets to that, finally, I suppose we'll roll some dice. But I don't think it would get to that in most cases. Then you pick an advantage. I forgot to mention this. You can either pick an advantage or priority to begin with. And the advantage is, superior fashion. And you get to pick, you get to go with your partner and pick back and forth on these advantages that you all have. And these would come out style-wise in the game. This is a role-playing game. So this gives you different tools to role-play this dramatic scenario. You get to choose your weapon, a couple items in your inventory. And again, it's setting the stage for these different dramatic moments. Then you have your circumstances, and you choose together whether you want to roll a die or answer questions on how the opening begins. If you roll the die on a 1 or 2, the challenger opens aggressively, and they win the turn right away. On a 3 or 6, the challenge character was prepared and parries and wins. That is in one circumstance. That is for the circumstance of the challenge. But it gives you a few different openings here to choose. You could come up with your own, but these are more than enough. There's the challenge, the chance encounter, the trap. And it gives you some examples, love examples in any TTRPG book. Always include them, creators. Gives you some examples of how the moves in the game would relate to these different openings. After you get through that opening situation, you progress into a regular play round. You choose those moves secretly, and then you reveal them at the same time. And you can do this there are some tokens that come with the special edition of this game. The player that has priority counts down from 3, and then you reveal the moves to each other. And once you have that, the winner of the turn reserves the right. Then you narrate what those moves mean. Someone has feint and someone has thrust. For instance, you would have one person narrate what they're doing to feint, what they're doing to thrust. But the person who wins gets the last word narratively on what happens. And then it progresses. It gives you some good role-playing tips here. This is helpful for, again, if you haven't played a role-playing game before, this gives you ways to make the game sing, what sort of lines you might use, how it might be helpful not to be so strictly in character, but to also express your intent out of character to your other player. For each of the different moves, thrust, feint, and parry, it gives you a lot of detail about what would happen in different scenarios. So what would a thrust win? What is an example? What does a thrust tie? And what does an example look like? So it gives you all the tools you need to determine how you want to play this out narratively in your descriptions with your partner. When a player reaches 9 points, that's when they win. And that means that the duel, this pre-duel, resolves. The loser is finally compelled to act, and they attempt to strike the first blow. Right before that, or really anywhere, there could be a moment where someone draws a weapon. And this doesn't have a mechanical reason, but it is saying that the narrative stakes have gotten higher. Someone has pulled out their sword, their blade, whatever it may be. It happens automatically when someone hits 8. Their opponent must draw their weapon. So again, you could imagine a scenario where if it's a long game, both players are getting to 8 points. Both players are drawing their blades because they've gotten to 8 points. It's a really tense, climactic scenario. And that's what this simple system has underneath it. It really builds towards this dramatic, climactic moment. And there is one thing to mix up this rock, paper, scissors scenario. There's this really clever penalty move mechanic. The penalty move represents your character choosing to utterly disrespect their opponent. You are welcome to interpret what counts as a penalty move, but it could be like you turn your back on your opponent or intentionally disarm yourself. What happens when you do that is you roll 2d6, and you compare it to your current score, which is between 1 and 8 if you're in play, or 0 and 8 if you're in play. If your score is above, if the roll is above your current score, you fail on your penalty roll. So if you currently have a low score, you're not going to want to do a penalty roll because it's a high chance of failure. And a failure means your opponent scores a point against you, and they have priority next turn. So you're going to lose a lot. High stakes. However, if you roll below your current score, you could score 2 points. But again, if you're rolling 2d6, you're going to get above 7 quite a bit. So it's going to be hard to get below your score to succeed. A penalty move is a risky move. High reward, but usually pretty risky. And especially if you roll exactly at your current score, you fail in an exceptional way. For each of those penalty move scenarios, this gives you full description of what that might look like, because it is, and I think dedicating that time to it tells you this mechanic is very important to mixing up the game, but you got to play it the right way. For each of these, it also tells you what would happen in a scenario where you won in a penalty, because a penalty could very easily lead to you winning the game. At the very end here is a few designer notes reminding you that though there is this competitive theme running through the game, this is collaborative. This game is not for the characters, it's for the observers. So the role-playing is not about, beefing up your character or having your character win. It's really about creating what is the most interesting scenario for the audience. What is the most dramatic scenario? And that's it. That is I Have the High Ground. This is a charming, is that a good word? Stylish zine that anyone can pick up and play. I like that it has these simple mechanics, but is really laser focused on that one dramatic scenario. And it does it really makes you think about how that scenario could play out in different forms, but still have that same underlying magic to it, that same dramatic magic. And this book this zine allows you to play with that magic and to make those moments yourself. So that's it for tonight. That's I Have the High Ground by Jess Levine. This was the TTRPG flip through on Tabletop Bookshelf. If you like what I'm doing in here, please like and subscribe. And of course, check out the shop. Tabletop Bookshelf is an online independent bookstore. We love to support independent, crowd-funded work just like this. But we also have a lot of other interesting stuff on the site, so check it out. Have a good night.